The new technology can supposedly be loaded into an intercontinental ballistic missile, the kind of missile that the North has been testing for the past years and months. Now, South Korea has convened a National Security Council meeting in response. Let's go straight to Seoul and speak to Joseph Kim, who's following this for us. So, Joseph, developments coming in the last few minutes. Let's first pick up the news that North Korea say they've developed this bomb, and we've had this earthquake on the peninsula. How concerned are South Koreans at the moment?
Well, at the current moment, we do need to differentiate between what the report said, which was earlier this morning, as well as this earthquake, which is just happening at around 11:30 local time. Now, there are differentiating reports in terms of South Korea's meteorological agency, as well as the U.S. and China's. Currently, South Korea is saying that they suspect this is North Korea's 6th nuclear test. However, we do have to look at some evidence regarding whether or not there is a certain depth to the earthquake and whether or not this could potentially be at a nuclear site. Now, currently, South Korea's National Security Council will meet an emergency meeting to talk about this and analyze the situation and ensure that South Korea is prepared for any situations that it does become a nuclear test. But at the current moment, there is still information coming in and analyses that need to be done.
Okay, we'll leave the earthquake there for now, Joseph, as you rightly say, because we're not certain exactly what caused it. But let's go back to the announcement that came in a few hours ago that North Korea say they now have a thermonuclear bomb, a hydrogen bomb. What steps are going to be taken by South Korea in response to that?
Well, North Korea has claimed that it had developed and perfected its hydrogen bomb technology last year in 2016. And this is one of the reasons that many are suspecting whether or not this is potentially true. This is why many analysts are trying to figure out where North Korea's technology exactly is and how far-reaching it is. However, because regardless of whether or not it's true, the threat is there. South Korea is taking measures such as trying to elongate its missile technology. Currently, it has a pact with the United States that South Korea cannot have a missile range to a certain extent. They're trying to make sure that that no longer is there, and they're also trying to create technologies to make sure that if there is any North Korean attack, that they will be able to defend against it. Now, that's one of the reasons why the U.S. and South Korea continue to have these drills, but these drills are also a source of conflict because North Korea sees them as a practice for war, and that's one of the reasons that North Korea also conducted its 5th nuclear test in September of last year.
And of course, with this step being taken, if it is confirmed that they do have a hydronuclear bomb, that will be a further advance in the North Korean program and further evidence that sanctions, threats from the US, from Japan, from South Korea are having no effect on the Kim Jong-un regime.
Well, whether or not it's having no effect on the leadership of North Korea, that's something that perhaps can be argued on both sides, especially because North Korea is putting a lot of their resources primarily to the military. That's why so many North Koreans are suffering from malnutrition, and there are many that are starving and don't have proper food to eat because the government takes the money and uses it for the military. Now, this is one of the reasons that the United Nations say that sanctions aren't the problem, but that implementation is the problem. We see different countries that aren't properly implementing these sanctions and actually thinking of them very loosely. This is why you see trade from Southeast Asia as well as Russia and China still happening with North Korea despite these sanctions, because these countries are not firmly implementing these sanctions to ensure that North Korea doesn't have funds coming into the country to support its nuclear and missile technology.
And finally then, Joseph, you and I speak every time there's a test, a missile launch, and I always ask you how it's affecting South Koreans. Now, we've had this incremental step, if it's proven right that there has been a hydrogen bomb developed. Is there any more concern amongst yourselves and people you speak to now that another step has been taken potentially by the North?
Well, I think there's always a lingering tension that South Koreans feel. This is one of the reasons that sentiment towards North Korea continues to go downward, especially with this new generation that hasn't really felt that North Korea and South Korea were once one country. That's why many people are still for making sure that militarization of South Korea, as well as the THAAD deployment opinion, is very high on the Korean Peninsula because they feel this threat. However, in terms of how it's affecting business or daily life, that's another thing because South Koreans have constantly felt this threat for 60 years. Therefore, if they stop what they're doing every day, it would be very difficult for them because, as you mentioned, these threats do come in very frequently. So even though there is a tension and there is a lingering fear, there is still the problem that they do need to carry on with their daily lives. And that's one of the reasons that many people have been accustomed to this threat and are sort of jaded and also desensitized to how much it affects their daily lives.